We are just outside of Tucson, Arizona, and we are gonna go chat with Stu about his Watermakers, Sun Pure Watermakers in particular.
Yeah, it'll be good to sit down with them and hear from them firsthand of how they got into it and all about their Watermakers that they make and why they're a really good choice.
Yeah, and just get some great info about Watermakers in general.
Looking forward to having a sit-down chat with him.
Well, I got into sailing in 1993 by accident. I was down in Mexico and the Hobie Cat fleet was there, and I helped a guy raise his mast and build his boat. He took me sailing and I was hooked. And a couple of years later, I went to San Diego with a friend, chartered a boat, and I loved monohulls and decided, ooh, I got to get one because I want to live on it. Mm-hmm. And just, it's in the blood. I think you either have it or you don't. And if you have it, it's almost like a disease. Mm-hmm. First monohull I got was a Lancer 28. Mm-hmm. And it was a great little boat, and we used it in Mexico a lot. And then I went to a Tartan 30, which we love the Tartan. We had a lot of fun on that, sailed all over the Sea of Cortez. Mm-hmm. And then we got an Irwin 54, mm-hmm. and we've had that now for 18 years. We got into Watermakers sort of by accident. I had a small Watermaker, and it just ran and ran and ran and never seemed to get our tanks full. And I would call the company to get information to see if I could add a larger pump. Mm-hmm. And I never could get satisfaction over 2 years. And I'd go to boat shows and ask, and of course the people at the boat shows are just salesmen, mm-hmm. and they don't know anything. So finally I gave up and I bought a Watermaker off eBay from a fella in North Carolina, and dissected it, learned how the various parts went together, and then I started reading and learning, and so I guess it's been 10 or 12 years ago I built my first one for the boat. That's sort of how we got into the business, mm-hmm. and we pride ourselves on being small. We don't want to be the biggest Watermaker company in the world. Sun Pure Watermakers. Mm-hmm. And we want to be available to answer questions, because that was my biggest problem when I started in Watermakers. I couldn't get any answers from anybody. And the manuals are great, but they don't always give you all the information you need. Yeah. So we get comments from a lot of our customers that that's the thing they like the most, is I'm accessible in email or phone.
What's the basic premise, I guess, of a Watermaker or a desalinator?
Well, to start with, when I first started, I thought it was magical. And I thought it was going to be very complex and require like a PhD or something. It's not. They are extremely simple. It's reverse osmosis, so you've got to bring water in our case salt water. You've got to pressurize. Well, you need to filter it a little, but you've got to pressurize it. And typically most Watermakers are around 800, 600, 900 PSI. And for that pressure forces it into a membrane that's microscopic. Mm-hmm. And it's small enough to let water molecules through, but eliminate minerals, nearly all bacteria and all viruses, and salt. So you get basically very pure water. And it goes overboard, the reject water, and the product water goes in your tank or a jerry jug or whatever. And it's that simple. Yeah. You don't have to have all the bells and whistles. And in fact, that's one of the reasons we, I think, are popular, because we don't have anything automated. You've got to throw the switch, you've got to adjust the needle valve, and then you've got to turn it off and send some fresh water through it yourself. Mm-hmm. But we don't have breakdowns either. Well, our two most popular ones are the first one is the half-horse DC, because we get a lot of sailors on smaller boats, mm-hmm. and they just don't have room for the bigger one or the energy to run it. Mm-hmm. And so we have a half-horse 12 volt, and that's 8 to 12 gallons per hour. And the reason for the variance is if you're anchored somewhere where there's fresh water coming in, the salt is dilute, so it's not as concentrate, so you'll get more production. And if you're in Alaska versus southern Mexico or somewhere where the water's warm, the temperature of the water makes a big difference on how much you can produce. And from there we go up to the 1 horsepower AC. We use a 2 capacitor motor, soft start. They'll run on a Honda 2000 or an inverter. We have a lot of people running them on inverters with a battery bank and some solar, or when they run their alternator to keep the batteries charged. And we sell that with a one membrane or two. The one membrane's typically about 20 gallons. If you go two, you get about 30-35% more water out of it for the same energy. And those are very popular. It seems like a lot of sailors now are using the Honda 2000s because they're so simple and reasonable and totally dependable. Then we go up to a horse and a half, and that goes to a 4-inch membrane, and you're talking 50 gallons plus there. It's a big system. And then we go to a 2 horsepower, and you know, you're talking right at 60 gallons an hour with that. All of our systems are under $4,000. The smaller ones are all under $3,000. And the nice thing, wherever you're at in the world, if your motor goes out, if there's a motor shop in a larger town there, you can get a motor to replace my motor. It may take more energy or something, but you can fix it yourself. If the pump goes out, which in 7 years I've never had a pump go out, they're a very high quality pump. If it goes out, they've got, I think it's like 150 some warranty places all around the world, in South America, Asia, Indonesia, they're everywhere. So you can get a replacement or parts for it very quickly and very simply. It's totally serviceable. You can install it yourself. A pickling valve where it comes in, the salt water comes in, that's number 1. So it's all labeled, so it makes it fairly simple.
Easy installation, right?
Yeah, well, I remember back when I did mine, and I didn't know anything, and I had to reinstall it about 3 times.
The other thing is that it's modular.
You find very few spaces on a sailboat where you can fit a non-modular unit where it's all put together already.
Right.
So modular is better because you can mount your input from your sea strainer. You can put the booster pump down there, and then you could run it over, and maybe, like I moved my pre-filter up into a closet. You know, I'm older and I don't bend, I got a bad back, and I didn't want to get down in the bilge to check the pre-filter, and you have to service that every so often and wash it out. So I mounted mine up high, and then I ran it back down to the high pressure pump, which is down in a lazarette where I never need to get to it.
Right.
And then I ran it to the RO membrane pressure housing, and I put that where it's very accessible so I can adjust the needle valve and see the flow meters and everything. So it's...
And being modular too, you can always add to it, like you were saying, like with the 2 horse and up, you could easily then add a second membrane at a later date if you wanted to, right? I mean,
well, on the 1 horsepowers you can add a second membrane. The half, we can do a 14-inch membrane or a 21, but we always get the 21 because it's only $5 more than the 14, but its output is up to twice as much because of the larger surface area. You can't add to the 21. You have to have enough reject water to keep the membrane flushed clean, so that's optimally sized. When you get into the 1 horse, you can add 2 membranes to that. When you get up to the 1.5 and 2, we use a 4-inch membrane. And you can't add to that. That's a big membrane. 1, we have really good quality systems, but we keep our price really low. It's myself and Maggie, and that's it. We build them ourselves, we stock them, we mail them. My brother helps in the winter when we get away when it's slower, and he'll ship them for us. But we stay small. I have no desire to be a monstrous company. I'm an older guy, retired, semi-retired. This is a hobby business with me, if you will. I enjoy it. We've got people all over the world with our systems, and we get emails, so we're getting to vicariously sail all over the world through all our friends that have gotten Watermakers. But we keep the price down. We keep it simple. When I get calls when I'm on my boat, somebody's got a Watermaker and we on the net, and they call, invariably I go over, it's because they've got automated systems, the electronics and the solenoid valves. And we all know that salt is a really harsh environment and it doesn't like electronics. With the manual systems, they're so easy to adjust and run anyway that, and most sailors, I think, are really tuned into everything on their boat. And if you manually set the needle valve, and if you manually turn the switches off and on, and if you manually throw the sampling valves and the seawater valve, you're in touch with your system. You're monitoring it and you're seeing it, and you really should do that. These automated systems, they work, but they break down more. Yeah. When I replaced the membrane in the unit I used to have on my boat, it cost me over $500. And for a similar sized membrane on my systems, which is a Dow Film Tech membrane, I think the best quality you can get, it's like $185 plus a little shipping. So they're fairly reasonable. The thing about membranes are, most companies don't tell you to flush it with fresh water after every use. And if you keep that in fresh water, you don't get the bacterial growth and the algae and everything growing on it, fouling it. You don't get salts that are calcifying onto the membrane. I've got membranes out there on systems 16 years old that are still performing up to spec. So
it's all about that preventative maintenance, right?
Yeah,
it
takes about 2 minutes to put 2 or 3, 4 gallons of fresh water, depending on the size of the system, through it, and your pumps and the whole system will last you probably longer than I'll live. Of course, I'm older. You might
maybe not myself. I don't know. Probably both of us. We'll probably both outlive it.
They're very dependable systems. They're very simple. And they're very serviceable by yourself. You've got to remember the salinity affects it, the water temperature, and if you run a little bit too small a size wire to your pump, your motor, and you get a half a volt a voltage drop, that's big time on how much your system's going to put out, that half a volt on a 12-volt system. Where were we?
What kind of support do you offer though for your
I get calls. I had a call on Thanksgiving Day, and the guy was so apologetic. And I said, no, it's okay. He was working on his boat. And, of course, you know, we sailors, we don't have schedules or holidays and weekends. And so I'm available. My phone works when I'm in Mexico, and I answer my emails. I typically look at least 2 to 3 times a day at my emails. So if somebody's in a part of the world where they can't call, we can always get together email. The only dumb questions are the one you don't ask. That's important. I remember the first time I got a water maker, and I looked at it, and it's like, what's this? What's that?
Yeah.
I mean, I had no idea.
A lot of the stuff we've done in general, I look at and I'm like, I don't even know what that's called, or there's the jargon, the technical name for it, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, but you and Hillary are a little different. In a year and a half, you guys have gone from never sailing to very proficient sailors, and you guys' learning curve has been very sharp on the uphill, and you guys have absorbed it and learned.
But because we've had a lot of really nice people along the way, yourselves included, that you have so much knowledge, right? And that's we just try and pick people's brains, and you just try and like retain as much of it as possible. All right, a real quick interjection right here.
We just want to give a shout out and a huge thanks to everyone who's helped us along the way in any way, shape, or form and helped us get this far.
Including Stu. Thanks to you, mate, we've now got a water maker on board.
Woohoo!
We put 3 pages in front of the actual manual now, and it says, do this first. And the first thing is we really want people to read the manual, because literally just about everything that we can think of and things that have come to us from our customers that we didn't think of have been put into that manual. So it's all there, and then we ask people to lay all the parts out, make sure everything's there, and lay them out in order, from the 3-way stainless steel valve that's down in the bilge to the booster pump to the pre-filter to the high pressure pump, and get them in order, and then think about what you're going to be using the most and you need access to, so that you can place it. Like myself, I've got my pre-filter in a cabinet so I can get the wrench on it and service it real easy. The rest of the system doesn't have to be as accessible, like my flow meters and stuff are down below a floorboard, because I get down there and adjust the needle valve real easy. But the pre-filter is a little bit more work, and it's got salt water in it, and you know, you just want it So I ask people to think about the utility of it and where it will work on their boat for their situation. The electric motor has a 1-year no fault. If something happens to the motor, you just take the placard, the plate on it, send it back to me, and I give it to the company, and the company ships you a brand new motor. You don't ship the old one back or anything. It's just a no-fault warranty. Most of the high-pressure pumps have a 3-year warranty. I've never had a warranty situation on one of them. I've never had a rebuild kit sold or somebody requests something for it. Right now, we're involved in developing a 50 hertz one for European sales. And the engineers at my high pressure pumps have helped me with the motors, the pumps, because they're 1450 RPM. And so you can't use an American pump. We've got to find European parts and stuff and get them imported. And so now we're ready to build our first prototype. And because I don't get a lot of calls, but since we started a website a year ago, I am getting some calls from Poland and places in Europe. I sell a lot to Australia. Well, probably, I always ask people to call me. I'm in no rush to sell something. I really like to talk to them, make sure that what they're getting, they're going to be satisfied with. And I think the biggest thing that I hit up first is energy. Where are you going to get your energy from? Because if you get a 1 horsepower or let's say a 2 horsepower and you've got a Honda generator, it's not going to work. And so we talk about energy, then we talk about the people on board, how much water you really need, how much you've been using, and then we talk about space. Do you have room for a 2 horsepower and a 5-foot long pressure vessel? And typically a big powerboat will, but a lot of sailboats just can't fit that in there. So, and then we get into installation, and we'll get into servicing it and how they can take care of it themselves. But probably in that order of importance, because energy is, most boats now have refrigerators and freezers, and that's normally the biggest consumer on a boat.
What's the best way to order from you? Like the website, should they call you first?
I like to call, bare minimum, I like to pass emails to talk about the energy and their lifestyle and stuff, just to make sure they're getting an informed decision when they do decide on something. I want them to want the system, I want them to need the system, I want them to get the right system, and that's not a snap decision. So that's the main thing, is take your time, look, and make sure you're getting the right system for your boat and you. We'll never be a great big company. We enjoy it. We like what we're doing. I really enjoy visiting with people. And believe it or not, a lot of our business has come from people that have homes on a beach, like in the Caymans or Mexico, the Verde Islands, and they throw a tube out off their dock, and they make their water for their house because, again, it's catchment water, and in the dry season, they get a little smelly. The first race I ever was in was, I think it was '95, and it was Marina del Rey to Puerto Vallarta. And I remember we were
spent a lot of time.
Did you go to Walnut Canyon?
Yeah, we just did that with her parents.
Yeah,
Her parents met us there after the Grand Canyon. But is that sucking water in? Is that bringing water in?
No, that's water out.
Okay.
And that's for cleaning with chemicals.
Probably both of these are available pretty much everywhere in the
Oh,
world.
yeah.
Right? I've seen that
Probably
big all over
Limas at
Mexico.
Home Depot,
yeah.
yeah.
Home Depot, I've seen it. And
That's
then
a
any of the
standard
other.
size, and they use them on house built. Right.
And then out of here is this is your product coming out at the top here? Or?
That's it.
So if these are mounted together here, where is this going to?
That's your reject brine.
Oh, that is your reject. Okay.
Yeah, that would go.
So the needle valve's controlling the pressure on.
This way.
It does control it that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Even though the water's coming in from that direction.
The only high pressure you have is from here and through there and through the high pressure stainless steel braid line.